You would never guess that this ordinary elote in front of this man gave him a genius business idea that could make him a fortune. Just minutes ago, his youngest son was crying out because the elote was too spicy. He advised his son not to eat it if it was too hot. But his son replied,
"No, I like it. It was good."
Richard immediately started observing his surroundings. He noticed that everyone in the park liked to sprinkle a lot of hot sauce on their food. This gave him a bold idea. If he coated potato chips with hot sauce and sold them, this product would surely be a global hit. He quickly bought various types of peppers and vegetables, preparing to create a perfect hot sauce at home. However, the first batches of the hot sauce were too intense, always making his son cry out from the spiciness.
Hot, like elote hot? Good hot?
No, bad.
While the family persisted in perfecting their hot sauce, the market was already flooded with various high-tech solutions. Just a single drop of red liquid could double the spiciness of food. However, Richard believed that only using genuine ingredients grown from the earth, combined with traditional Mexican methods, could produce the perfect hot sauce. In pursuit of perfection, the family tried every type of pepper available and even used the small hamster's treadmill to ensure the ingredients were thoroughly mixed. After countless adjustments and improvements, the final product, carrying the family's hopes, was presented to their youngest son.
Burns good or burns bad?
It burned good.
The greatest snack in history was born. The spicy Cheetos that would later sweep the globe. Richard was a janitor at a large factory, and as a Mexican-American, he had faced bullying since childhood. And his alcoholic father treated him terribly. Back then, his daily lunch was burritos made by his mother, but his white classmates always used this as an excuse to pick on him, claiming his burritos were disgusting. When Richard's mother learned of this, she didn't change his lunch. Instead, she made an extra burrito for him to share with his classmates. At lunchtime, sure enough, the group began to mock his food again. But Richard raised the burrito and said,
Oh my God, so good. Delicioso. Want some?
Ew, I'm not gonna eat that.
Then he immediately pushed the sidekick to the front and insisted that he try it first. With no other option, the sidekick reluctantly took a bite. Instantly, he was captivated by the burrito's deliciousness and even wanted another. Seeing this, the leader reached for another burrito, but Richard stopped him.
25 cents.
In this way, not only did he cleverly resolve his troubles at school, but he also successfully captured the heart of his future wife, Judy. The legend of the delicious burritos quickly spread among classmates. As Richard brought more and more burritos to school, his piggy bank grew fuller. However, fate always enjoys playing tricks on people. One day, he took the money he had saved from selling burritos to the store, intending to buy a piece of chocolate for Judy, who had never tasted it before. However, during checkout, the owner suspected that his money was stolen. Coincidentally, a police officer standing in line behind him also took notice. If he had been a white kid, a few explanations would clear the air, and the police might have even praised his cleverness. But Richard was Mexican, so the officer didn't give him a chance to explain and instead put him in the car. This experience led Richard to give up on himself. He didn't even finish elementary school and followed the path of most Mexican Americans in his community, joining a gang. The only silver lining was that he successfully married Judy. The couple spent their days either being chased by the police or locked up in prison. But one day, when Judy discovered she was pregnant, she realized that they couldn't continue living like this. To provide a stable and safe environment for their child, they had to change. But changing their current situation was easier said than done, especially since Richard was a dropout with no skills to make a living. When his buddies invited him to go out again, he looked at his pregnant wife and ultimately chose to cut ties with his past life. However, making the right choice didn't mean life would suddenly become easy. Fast forward to 1982, Richard's family was so poor they couldn't afford food. His wife had to dilute milk with water for their young son, and when their older son's shoes fell apart, they had to use chewing gum as a temporary fix. His wife, while holding their child, sold burritos on the street to make ends meet. Even though their life was so hard, Judy still encouraged Richard to keep trying and helped him craft a polished resume. However, due to his low education level and criminal record, no one was willing to hire Richard, not even for manual labor. Despite their hard work, they couldn't even afford a decent meal. With no other options, Judy urged him to set aside his pride and go to his father's house for a meal, at least to ensure their children had something to eat. After struggling a long time, Richard went to his father's house, where he hardly ever visited. Upon seeing him, his father, as usual, humiliated him for being good for nothing, even unable to support his own wife and children. Richard felt very discouraged after hearing this, but he didn't argue, as his father's words were indeed harsh but true. Ultimately, Richard had no choice but to turn to his old street friend, wanting to return to his old trade. However, his friend, considering that Richard had a family, turned him down and instead recommended that he apply for a job at the largest local snack processing factory. The next day, when Richard arrived at the factory and saw the job application form, he was dismayed to find that even a janitor's position required a high school diploma. With a heavy heart, he had to take the application back home. Upon learning about this, Richard's wife immediately helped him fill out the resume and even fabricated a high school education background to help him pass. However, during the interview, it turned out that the manager had attended the same high school that Richard's wife had made up for him. Before long, the manager exposed the lie. Realizing that he was about to lose this hard-won job opportunity, Richard quickly stopped the manager.
Sir, look, I'm fast, I'm smart. Like, I know I don't look it, but I promise I'll be the best worker you ever hired. Look, maybe I don't got no diploma, but I got a PhD. I'm poor, hungry, and determined, sir.
Well, that's just stupid.
Looking at the earnest Richard before him, the manager ultimately decided to give him a chance. Nobody could have imagined it was this manager's kind decision that would completely alter the fate of the entire factory. Having finally become a janitor, Richard, on his first day of work, eagerly assured the manager that he would become the best janitor. Despite his department having only 2 people and the daily work being monotonous and strenuous, none of this affected his enthusiasm for the job. His dedication even made his colleagues feel a sense of urgency. As Richard's work stabilized, he developed a keen interest in the factory's machinery. During his free time, he asked engineers about the working principles of the machines but was met with humiliation. In the past, Richard would never have tolerated such insults, but now he had to maintain a smile, knowing how hard it was to secure this job. Fortunately, not all engineers were so arrogant. One engineer named Clarence maintained a polite facade toward Richard. However, when Richard inquired about the machine's operation, Clarence's demeanor clearly changed. A colleague seeing the situation was not good. How did the globally popular Flamin Hot Cheetos come into existence? It all started with the economic recession in the United States during the 1980s. After experiencing a period of rapid growth, the United States entered an economic downturn in the 1980s. Subsidies targeting low-income groups were drastically cut, leading to a surge in unemployment. With a lack of consumer spending, factory orders plummeted, and the shareholders of the company where Richard worked decided to close down some factories to cut costs. The lower-level workers were naturally the first to suffer for this decision. As the company's president, Roger was reluctant to see his employees displaced, so he recorded a VCR message to boost morale and encourage everyone to find a solution to the company's problems. He hoped that all employees would think like the boss and seek new development for the company. However, to the colleagues, the VCR seemed like nothing more than empty words and a consolation prize from the president. Only Richard watched the whole video and took Roger's words to heart. Opportunity always favors the prepared, and one day, while taking his sons out for a load, a casual comment from his son unexpectedly sparked the idea of making spicy Cheetos. Traditional Mexican cuisine has always had a market in the United States but has never been taken seriously. For example, on the shelves of the community supermarket, there are only plain and cheese Cheetos, catering only to white tastes. If they could develop a spicy version, it would be popular among Latinos and attract a large customer base for the company. Richard then took his family to the store to buy fresh ingredients for making hot sauce. After numerous failures, they finally perfected the hot sauce. Meanwhile, the factory was undergoing massive layoffs, and Richard's familiar colleagues were leaving one by one. Richard quickly approached the manager with the idea of spicy Cheetos and requested to speak with the president. But the manager mocked him, saying that developing a new product would take years and cost millions, and as a janitor, he should focus on his own job rather than daydreaming. Richard left dejectedly but wasn't one to give up easily. In the middle of the night, he sneaked into the manager's office, found the company's phone book, and called the president in Italy. Despite the secretary's gatekeeping, Richard claimed to be a technician from the cleaning department. The secretary was momentarily stunned and then realized he was just a janitor. Richard quickly added that he had a genius idea to save the factory and protect countless jobs. Moved by the empathy of a fellow worker, the secretary eventually transferred the call to the president.
Thank you for taking my call. I have an idea that you need to hear.
I'm listening.
Okay, yes. Sir, I'm Mexican. I'm proud of it. And there's a lot of us in this country, and we spend money on snacks just like everybody else. We eat Doritos, but not before covering them suckers with tapatio. It's like the more it burns, the more money we'll spend on it. So I thought, why don't I make my own spicy slurry?
You made your own spicy slurry?
Yeah, I did, and it's good. You can slather it on everything. Doritos, Fritos, popcorn, Cheetos. And the best part, sir, it is 100% Mexican approved. My family, my neighbors, they can't get enough. And I got a plan, Mr. Enrico, to get it to the streets, to get it to my people. I think it will save our factory. It will save jobs.
Save jobs, huh? That's a lot of confidence there, Richard.
Yes, sir. And you said in the video, think like a CEO. So I did.
Roger never expected that a janitor would watch his video and take it seriously. Richard suggested sending some samples, and Roger, eager to find a new direction for the company, gladly agreed. After getting the address, Richard and his wife nervously mailed the spicy Cheetos, praying that their product wouldn't disappoint Roger. When Roger received the spicy Cheetos, he hesitated at first, but after trying them, he was immediately impressed by their deliciousness. Without even wiping his hands, he called Richard to tell him that his mind was filled with Richard's proposal and that he would come to the factory in 2 weeks to discuss it further. The news spread like wildfire throughout the company. Everyone was shocked to learn that a Mexican-American janitor had bypassed everyone and reported directly to the president. From the regional president to the factory manager, everyone was furious and tried to find out who was responsible. It wasn't until the call reached the floor manager that they identified the rule-breaking janitor, Richard. However, even after finding the culprit, they couldn't stop Roger's decision. As Roger's car drove into the factory, the moment that would determine Richard's fate had finally arrived. At that moment, Richard was nervously rehearsing his speech. After an awkward handshake with Roger, the tense presentation began. However, Richard had only completed elementary school, and despite finally getting the PowerPoint presentation ready, he stumbled over the technical jargon in his notes. Eventually, he decided to put down the script, turn off the PowerPoint, and speak off the cuff in his own words. He candidly acknowledged that the company's product line was monotonous and emphasized the vast Latino market. Although the executives present were dissatisfied with Richard, Roger appreciated his enthusiasm and ideas. With his approval, Spicy Cheetos finally went into production, and the first batch of 5,000 boxes was successfully placed on supermarket shelves. However, weeks passed, and while the shelves next to them were empty, the Spicy Cheetos remained unsold. This stark contrast was completely different from what Richard had envisioned. The regional president, who had previously been critical of Richard, now had a reason to order the product's discontinuation. Richard couldn't understand why no one was buying the product until his son pointed out that he had never seen any advertisements for Flamin Hot Cheetos. Others likely didn't even know what Flamin Hot Cheetos were, so how could they buy them? But by that time, Richard had no money to spend on advertising. However, this small obstacle wouldn't deter Richard. The next day, Richard reached out to his friends and went door to door in the community to promote Flamin Hot Cheetos. He then rallied the factory employees to spread the word and recommend Flamin Hot Cheetos to their friends and family. Everyone was clear that the reason Flamin Hot Cheetos were not selling was not because they didn't taste good, and this product was currently the only way to save the factory. So the employees spontaneously recommended Flamin Hot Cheetos to people on the streets and in parks, even giving out free samples for people to try. Thanks to everyone's efforts, soon after, Flamin Hot Cheetos were selling so well that they were all sold out. When the sales data was delivered to Roger, he curiously asked the regional president how much advertising budget they had invested in Flamin Hot Cheetos, only to find out that no money had been spent on advertising. Then Roger called Richard again. He wanted him to quickly increase production to 5 million boxes, because he was going to promote Flamin Hot Cheetos nationwide. The nearly bankrupt factory was revitalized, with all production lines back in operation and all former employees being recalled to work. At this point, Flamin Hot Cheetos had become more than just a snack. It represented Richard's and everyone's hopes and was the support for many families. At this moment, Clarence walked over with a smile. He was finally promoted to the factory director. While being happy for Clarence's promotion, Richard nervously asked about his own transfer, hoping to become an engineer to improve his family's situation. When he got a negative answer, Richard was once again extremely disappointed. What's more frustrating is that at this time, the manager actually ordered him to go upstairs to clean the toilet. Despite his frustration, Richard obeyed. However, when he went upstairs with his mop, he unexpectedly encountered Roger. Just as Richard was puzzled, the president formally invited him to join the company's executive team. The president inserted a golden nameplate into the doorframe, signaling Richard's promotion from janitor to the group's marketing director. As Richard sat in his new office, he still felt like it was a dream. Once he had composed himself, he called his wife to share the news.
Hey, Jude, it's me.
Hey, baby, what's up?
We're gonna need more ties.
I'm so proud of
And with that, the movie ends. Flamin' Hot is based on the life story of Richard Montañez. His journey has become a legendary tale in the marketing world. After retiring, he continues to live happily with his supportive wife, Judy. Feel free to leave your thoughts